Lake Nyos sits nestled in the rolling hills of northwestern Cameroon, a picturesque crater lake formed within an inactive volcanic crater. For generations, locals considered the deep blue waters a blessing, a source of fresh water, fish, and natural beauty in the remote highlands of West Africa. The villages surrounding the lake, Nyos, Subum, Char, and others, were simple farming communities where life had remained largely unchanged for generations. Families worked the fertile volcanic soil, tended livestock, and fished the clean waters of the lake, if only they had known what lurked beneath the tranquil surface. In the weeks leading up to August 21st, 1986, there were subtle warnings that something was amiss. Villagers reported unusual phenomena around the lake. Fish were found floating dead on the lake's surface. Small animals were discovered mysteriously deceased near the shoreline. Local folklore spoke of a lake spirit that could occasionally rise to kill. Some noted an unusual quietness in the surrounding forest. A few reported a strange taste to the water. But in an area with no scientific monitoring equipment and limited communication with the outside world, these warnings went unheeded. How could peaceful water become a silent killer? As darkness fell on August 21st, 1986, residents of the villages surrounding Lake Nyos prepared for another night like any other. Families gathered for evening meals. Children were tucked into bed. Final chores were completed by lamplight in the absence of electricity. At approximately 9:30 p.m., something extraordinary and terrifying happened. Survivors would later describe hearing a rumbling sound like distant thunder. Others recalled a strange odor, like rotten eggs, wafting through the air. But most victims never had a chance to notice anything at all. What the villagers couldn't see was that Lake Nyos had turned deadly. A massive cloud of colorless, odorless gas erupted from the depths of the lake. Carbon dioxide that had been building up in the water for decades suddenly released in an explosive limnic eruption. The gas cloud, heavier than air, hugged the ground as it rolled down the valleys from the lake. It moved silently at nearly 45 miles per hour, expanding to cover an area of 15 square miles. Within the cloud, the concentration of carbon dioxide was as high as 95%, replacing life-giving oxygen everywhere it went. The physics of what happened next are particularly disturbing. The gas cloud was invisible. It moved silently through sleeping villages. It displaced oxygen without warning. Victims would lose consciousness after just 1 or 2 breaths. Death would follow within minutes. As dawn broke on August 22nd, rescue workers from neighboring regions who had heard strange reports began to arrive. What they discovered was a scene of unprecedented horror. Bodies lay everywhere, in homes, in yards, in fields. People appeared to have died where they stood or sat or slept. Livestock and wildlife were also deceased, scattered across the landscape. Even insects had dropped from the air. One survivor, Joseph Nkwine from Subum, later described his experience. "I could not speak. I became unconscious. I could not open my mouth because then I smelled something terrible. I heard my daughter snoring in a terrible way, very abnormal. When crossing to my daughter's bed, I collapsed and fell. I was there till 9 o'clock in the morning. I managed to go over to my daughter's bed. I found her dead." The few survivors largely survived due to lucky circumstances. They had been away from home, on higher ground, or in a location where air circulation protected them from the full concentration of the gas. The numbers associated with the Lake Nyos disaster are staggering. 1,146 people dead, over 3,500 livestock killed, 3 villages completely decimated, 6 villages affected in total, countless wildlife victims. An entire ecosystem temporarily destroyed. The Lake Nyos disaster remains the largest known case of asphyxiation caused by a natural event in recorded history. What makes this disaster so terrifying is not just the death toll, but the scientific reality of what occurred and what could occur again. Lake Nyos is what scientists call a meromictic lake, a body of water whose layers don't mix. The lake sits atop a volcanic pocket that continuously leaks carbon dioxide into the water. Over time, this CO2 dissolves into the deepest waters of the lake under high pressure. Under normal circumstances, this gas would gradually diffuse into the atmosphere. But Lake Nyos's unusual structure trapped the gas like a champagne bottle, with pressure building over years or decades. Scientists believe that a small landslide or unusual weather pattern may have disturbed the delicate balance of the lake's layers on that August night, triggering what's known as a limnic eruption, essentially turning the lake into a shaken soda bottle suddenly opened. The most disturbing aspect? No one knew such a phenomenon was even possible until it happened. Lake Nyos was not the first instance of such a disaster. A similar but smaller event occurred 2 years earlier at nearby Lake Cameroon, killing 37 people. Scientists now know of at least 3 lakes in the world capable of such eruptions. After the Lake Nyos disaster, scientists installed a degassing system, essentially a pipe that allows the deep gas-laden water to rise slowly to the surface, releasing carbon dioxide in a controlled manner. But the system requires maintenance, and some scientists worry it may not be sufficient to prevent another eruption. More terrifying still is the realization that other unidentified lakes around the world may harbor the same deadly potential. How many communities live beside peaceful waters that could turn deadly in an instant? Perhaps the most haunting aspects of the Lake Nyos disaster are the experiences of those who survived. Many awoke to find entire families deceased around them. Others returned from trips to discover everyone they knew dead. Survivor accounts describe waking up surrounded by deceased loved ones. The eerie silence of villages, normally filled with sounds of people and animals. The psychological trauma of being among the few left alive. Experiencing neurological damage from oxygen deprivation. Finding bodies positioned as if death had come in an instant. Mothers still holding children. People sitting at tables. Many survivors reported persistent neurological problems afterward, including partial paralysis, difficulties concentrating, and other signs of brain damage caused by oxygen deprivation. In the years following the disaster, the affected villages were largely abandoned. The Cameroonian government relocated survivors to new settlements. International scientists descended on the area to study what had happened and prevent it from occurring again. The disaster revealed how vulnerable we remain to unusual natural phenomena. How an invisible, odorless gas can wipe out entire communities before anyone realizes what's happening. Today, warning systems and gas extraction pipes have been installed at Lake Nyos. The lake's beautiful blue waters have returned to their tranquil appearance. But beneath the surface, gas continues to accumulate, and scientists continue to monitor the situation closely. Despite decades of study, disturbing questions remain about the Lake Nyos disaster. Could a larger eruption occur in the future? Are there other lakes worldwide with similar deadly potential? What if the degassing systems fail or are not maintained? Could climate change affect the stability of such lakes? What warning signs might have been missed? The Lake Nyos disaster serves as a chilling reminder of nature's hidden dangers, that death can come silently, invisibly, and without warning. In a world where we often believe we understand and have mastered our environment, Lake Nyos stands as a stark reminder of how much we still have to learn, often at a terrible cost. As you sleep tonight, consider what invisible forces might surround you, undetected until it's too late. The air you're breathing right now might seem perfectly normal, until suddenly it isn't. The deadliest things are often those we cannot see.